The latest version of Easy Security has a lot of improvements in it. This one is a short overview of the most important ones that are in the new version in here. First of all, there's an improved role center that has additional fact boxes. There's only the options that are needed, so it has been cut down to a little fewer menu items and so on. One of the key features in this version is that you actually now can group users for field level action and data security. It will make it very easy to set up many users, because you basically just say, okay, this one is the master of the group, and you set up that person, and everybody else get the same permission as that one. And you can even override the existing ones if a user needs special permission in one table, for example. You can also set up dynamic filters based on code. So anything that requires code to calculate a filter, like the salesperson codes, the allowed posting range and things like that one, all depending on the user's setup, can now be programmed together with the data security option in field level action and data security. There's also been added card forms for logins, roles, and role groups, and that makes the usability more like the way that the normal RoleTailored experience is, where you go in and add information in a card, and then you only look at it in lists. So there's some tracking of published time, and there's a lot of preparation for NAV 7. There is a beta version of Easy Security available for NAV 7 also, and one of the things that has been added is almost images on anything of menu items, because that's a requirement for NAV 7 to look right. And of course there's many more small improvements in here. But let's first take a look at the role center in here. So this one is the new role center, has been optimized with less information in here, and there is now roles and logins, field security, and then there's all the parts about restore points or the processes that you can run in here. There's a couple of fact boxes telling you about the database name, connection ID. That is interesting if you're going to actually do recording. It's nice to know what your connection ID is. You can also look at the session table, of course. There's also when you did the last publish and who did it and so on. So you have a little extra information in here in the role center. But let's look at one of the key features in here, and that's ability to actually have groups in the field level actions and data security in here. You can have only a single record required for each user now, so you basically just say that this user is like this one, and you don't have to do anything else by table or anything like that one. Each individual user can of course be overwritten, so even if this person is like another one, if you design a setup for that individual person in one table, it will override the group assignment. So you can still say, okay, the groups is the general one, but the user can have his individual permissions also. And it still works with the Windows Active Directory group. So let's take a look at how it actually is done now. So if I go here and get to the setup in here from my role center, there's a lot of things now under groups. You can look up Windows Live groups, and that only works in the Classic client because the RoleTailored client don't have the table that is actually being used for that Windows group member. But you can actually use a stored version of the Windows group in here. So basically in the Classic client you just copy all the information to a table in Easy Security, and then you can just use the stored Windows groups in here. So it also works with Windows groups in the RoleTailored client. Windows groups really has that disadvantage that for multiple companies you have the same setup in each company. So the other thing you can do in here is you can use groups stored inside field level security in here, and you can then go in and say you actually want to allow manually enter group members also in here. So this one basically enables the feature to allow to use grouping in here. If you want to see debug messages every time a user get the group first time, you can actually have this checkmark set in here. So, but that's really only for debugging purposes to see that your setup is correct. So I now enabled the feature, so let's go look at some field level security groups in here. And if I first look at my user setup, I can see I have the user all in here. And I have a couple more people that just needs to be like the user all, or like Diana, for example, in here. So I can go into my fields group members in here, and I'll say my master for this group is Diana. And I will say that John should be like Diana, and I'll also have Peter being like Diana in here. So this one basically will say, like, every time John and Peter logs in and they are going to use field level security or data security, they will use it like Diana actually has it set up. So if we go back and look at Diana, she only have set up in the sales header and sales line in here, and then it will fall back, of course, to the blank user after that one. But if Peter needed full access in the sales header, for example, I could always go in here and say, okay, I want to have a new one. It should be Peter, and it should be in the sales header, and I will just leave that blank in here. So as I come back here now, this one will override the group membership that gives Diana's basic setting in here, so Peter would actually have full access in the sales header. So it allows you to set up grouping to minimize the setup, but it also allows this one overriding and having a single user having a higher level of permissions in here. Dynamic filters in data security is one of those things where if you wanted to filter by the posting range, for example, you had to constantly change your data, or there was really no way of doing it. If you want to filter on the salesperson code that is a field in the user setup, you also would have to create one data security setup for each individual salesperson, and it wasn't very optimal when you got into these kinds of setups in here. So what has been added now is dynamic filters in data security, and it's basically based on a calculation in CAL, and there's also a code unit where you can customize your own filters. So if we go take a look at it here, I can go in and look at the filters that has been set up in here. So if I go to my Easy Security setup in here for field level security, I have my dynamic filters down here, and that's a long list of them here, and here's by default the calculation for my user setup. So one is my allowed posting range in here, and it's currently saying from the first day to the last day inside NAV in here. But if I went and changed my user setup in here, so let's move this one out here, user setup, and I added a new one for myself here, I can say I want to allow posting from the 1st of 11 to the last of 2014 in here. So that will be my new user setup in here. And if I now go back and look at my filters, I can now see that that actually is calculating that value in here. And this filter would be applied as I actually go in and add a security code. So let's go in and apply that one to a security code that would work for my chart of account, for example, in here. So I'll go in and add a new one here. So, and it will be for 15, and it will be my allowed range. And I'll go look at my objects, and I can just go in here and say I need to do all pages in here and look at the card. And then I'll go down and say in my date filter, I want to have an editable one, and I would just leave it editable in here to allow that one. And I need to check my substitute filter value here, because that's basically how it enables the calculations in the filter value out here. But then I can go out and do a lookup here, and they will then say, I want to allow have my allowed posting range and it basically put 2 percent signs around it. It's a lot like variables in the batch program, for example, or also matching how the new filters in 2013 actually works. I can have this one, but I could also go in and say, okay, I also want to have anything that was older than 1.1 2006, for example, in here. Whoops, that needs the 0 more in here. So I will have additional filters in here that I can also add in here. So let's go apply this to my user, and I have to go to the user setup to do that. And I don't have anything for peer in here, and I don't have anything for 15, so let's just go add it for the blank user. Allowed range here. If I now go open up my chart of account, I can see that now my filter here has been applied, so any exactly as it actually was in here. So how is this working in here, and how can you customize this one? If we go look in the Classic client, there is a few code units in here. One of them is the one being used by Easy Security, and it should really not be modified in here. So if I go in, I can see my allowed posting range calculation. It goes in and see if it can find the user setup, it will do that filter. If it can't, it will go look in the GL setup, and then it will apply that filter. And if it can't find anything, it gives you that open range where you basically have all filters in here. So this code unit is part of Easy Security, and it should not be modified. There's another code unit in here that is called Dynamic Filters Customize in here. 8.14 in here, and that one can actually be customized in here. And there already is sample code for how to do time in here. So I can actually just remove the comments on this one and then save this code unit in here. So this one, of course, created the code that would do it, and it will basically just return a text string with whatever the filter is in here, and this function returns what should be the name and what should be the text for it in here. To get this one to work in dynamic filters, you go into the dynamic filters, and then you go here and insert filters from a code unit, and I'll go find my code unit in here, and I click OK, and this one will go through the insert function, and it will add it in here. And it basically allows you to use any code unit. So if you want to use this filter functionality as part of your ISV solution, you could create your own code unit that returns these filters, or you could create a code unit in 50,000 range also if you wanted to, for customized filters the same way as it was in here. So this basically allows any calculation that you can come up with to be reused in the data security, and it's can in some cases reduce the setup from many records, 20, 30 records, to a single record, because the filter now can be calculated. The last option in here, if I look at my data security code, I created my allowed range in here. It of course works in Classic and RoleTailored client, so there's no difference in where I do it. It's this option here to always substitute the filter value. And if that value is checked, it means every time the page or form open, it will actually recalculate it. And in the case of allowed posting, that would be a good thing to have, because it basically means that if you change the data, it would actually also change the value in here. Else it will keep on using the value and only calculate it once, and this one is done to optimize performance. So typically, in most cases, you will have that you also want to calculate the value every time the page or form opens in there. But that's basically all the features that are in the new version of Easy Security here. So